What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My wife's probably gonna kill me because I'm taking the car down a dirt road right now. I just went to the auto parts store and picked up a oil pan container, or oil container, disposable. So I'm gonna change the oil and the filter in the Mini, and also swap in the new axles. So I want to take you guys along for the journey. And the reason I'm on this dirt road is when I was coming out of Advanced Auto Parts, the Mini is not fast at all and there's a lot of traffic, and I had to go from the far left lane across the middle into the far right before all the traffic got to me, and unfortunately I just didn't make it. So I'm doing 10 miles an hour down a dirt road after I just cleaned it the other day. Sorry, babe. I'll clean it again, don't worry. So this is going to be an interesting video because I've never changed axles on a vehicle aside from my old SRT4 back in like 2010, 2011. I did watch a YouTube video on how to do it, and oddly enough, there's not that much German engineering that went into holding the axles into place. There's no retainer rings, there's no C-clips or anything like that that hold it into the transmission on either side. They're just splines that, you know, they fit in to the other grooves. The input shaft spline fits into the transmission spline perfectly, as long as you don't screw it up putting it in. But you got to take the wheel off, the axle nut, two bolts on the lower ball joint. I think it's a ball joint, and the nut off of the tie rod. You tap out the axle from the hub. You undo, or you unbolt 3 13mm bolts at the at the carrier bearing housing, and you pull it right out. And thankful enough, these axles from O'Reilly's, or O'Reilly Auto Parts store, they actually came with the carrier bearing housing, everything assembled. 9 times out of 10 when you buy axles for the Mini Cooper, you have to switch over the carrier bearing housing. Did I say that right? The carrier bearing housing. Man, that's kind of hard to say when you're trying to say it fluidly. So yeah, let's get to it.
The next day.
Alright, so let me tell you how much of a pain in the butt it was to get to this point. So as you can see, I've got some tools over here. I've got the new driver side axle. I've got some tools I just rented from AutoZone so I could hopefully finish where I left off last night. So this is day number 2, and this is the issue I ran into. This is the driver hub and rotor assembly. The axle actually is stuck in the center. So usually you can just take a mallet or a hammer and knock that out, and it should slide right out. But after a few hours of PB Blaster and pounding it with a sledgehammer, it really wasn't budging. So I rented a tool called the front wheel drive hub puller, and what this does is you bolt this to the hub assembly itself, where the rotor, where the wheel studs go. You crank this down with an impact, and what that does is drive this rod into the axle and pushes it out, hopefully. So that's one issue. The second issue I was having, that I'm gonna have to use a slide hammer and that puller adapter that you see there. Second problem, I don't know if you can see it, but right there, excuse me, right there, there's the other part of the axle. It's stuck in the transmission. So I think 90% of front wheel drive axle swaps are difficult. Well, at least in my case it is. All those fuel tanks. Oh yeah, plenty of fuel for the Hurricanes. The passenger side was a breeze. I think it took me less than 30 minutes. I got to put the power steering fan back on the underside of the vehicle, and that side's all taken care of. Everything's put back together. And oddly enough, I didn't have to remove the entire assembly like I did the driver's side. The only thing I had to do here was unbolt the tie rod end and the 2 bolts that hold the lower control arm, and I just swung the strut and hub and everything to the side, and the axle pulled right out. So this is the axle that I pulled out of the passenger side. It doesn't look like it's in bad condition, but there was a lot of play in it, and I guarantee this combined with the other side that was never replaced. It's not really a maintenance item that needs to be replaced. It's more of a, you know, if it breaks type of thing. So passenger side's done. I got to put the power steering cooling fan back onto place and put the wheel on, but I've got everything like suspended right there so it doesn't, you know, fall and break the wiring. So I'm going to use this hub puller and see if I can't drive that axle through the hub. So wish me luck. Alright guys, it is done. Made a little bit of a mess there, but oh well, that comes with the territory. Driver's side is now complete. Using that slide hammer with the axle puller adapter, I yanked on it about 3 times and voila, it came out pretty easily. Passenger side is done. The only thing that's still giving me an issue is the carrier bearing housing, which is this thing right here. As you can see, there are 3 13mm bolt holes there. It is 1/8 of an inch off the new one, so at the moment there are no bolts holding that in, but the axle itself is in the transmission. The other end is properly seated, so it's not going to come out, and that housing is not even going to turn at all because the way it's designed. I'm not sure exactly why the housing's there to begin with, but I know it's just to protect the bearing, but why there's bolt holes there when it doesn't move just doesn't really make any sense. So I actually need to get the vehicle aligned now that I took the driver's side completely apart. The only thing that was there was the strut. Everything else was taken off, as you saw earlier, and as a result the alignment got screwed up, and before it wasn't bad at all. It wasn't misaligned at all. Now it is. It wants to pull left pretty good. So I'll get that taken care of. Right now I'm letting it cool off. As you can see, I got the oil cap taken off. I'm not sure why I did that because I haven't really even undid the drain plug, but I'm gonna let it cool off so I don't burn my hands when I go to pull off the drain plug. And the oil I'm using is Liqui Moly, and a man filter and a new drain plug and washer. So if you guys are interested in the oil that I use for this car, I'll put it in the description below. I know Mini recommends Castrol oil, if you see there, but I'm not really a fan of Castrol. I usually use either Liqui Moly, Mobile One, or on the GLI, I can't remember what I use on that. Rotex? I don't know. I can't remember. But anyways, gonna do the oil change now. Let it cool off. Going to get some lunch because I haven't eaten breakfast, anything, and I think it's 2 o'clock, maybe 2:30. So yeah,